Customer Success Account Manager in Microsoft. He's also Sustainability Community Co-founder and Chapter Lead Germany. Among other topics, he will talk today about Microsoft sustainability journey, core commitments, and AI for Earth. Good evening, Sebastian.
Hi, how's it going? Hope everything's fine.
Everything's great. Are you prepared and ready to go?
Okay, let me share my screen then.
Perfect.
So now you should be able to see my screen.
Yes, we see it. You're good to go.
Cool. Thanks a lot for everyone joining this evening session or late session. Yeah, as introduced, I want to talk a little bit about sustainability, specifically about environmental sustainability, how we at Microsoft see it, what's our progress, our position on it, and what we have done so far. So let's get started. So, technical glitch. The presentation is not moving forward. Now it should be. So yeah, climate change. We all heard about it. It's in the news a lot. We had a lot of presentations, political stages, and for us as humanity, it's pretty much the biggest challenge of our lifetime, especially our generations. Already in August 2020, the report of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change said climate change is affecting every region on Earth multiple ways. Sure, carbon dioxide, CO2, is one of the main drivers of climate change, and just as all the greenhouse gases that are emitted by us humans, they're responsible for warming the planet, and all our actions that are involved with our lives, personal, professional, are all heavily impacting our own footprint. And by now, I think we all understood that we need immediate and rapid and large-scale action to reduce our own footprint as a human race on this planet and to limit the warming of our planet, because even 1.5 or 2% will be really drastic changes for our planet. So let's take a little look how we approach this and what other pillars, what other core priorities did we set as a company to reduce our footprint, not only with the carbon footprint, but beyond that. And we are a technical or a technology company, and we want to bring technology and science together to solve this planet-sized challenge. Therefore, we as Microsoft, we are committed to harness the power of technology to help everyone and everywhere to build a more sustainable future. And let's dive into it. Of course, sustainability, specifically environmental sustainability, in the news or politics, it has been discussed what it will cost us, what we want or what we have to spend to achieve those goals. But on the other hand, there's a business impact for us as well, or not a business impact, but a business opportunity. For example, globally, governments and utilities alone are expected to spend about $60 billion US dollars on energy efficiency technologies and investments by 2028. Also, precision agriculture is expected to grow to a $12 billion market in the future by 2025, and that's not too far away. Also, the bold climate actions that we and others have to take in the fields of energy, cities, food, land use, water, and industries can deliver a total economic benefit of all more than 26 trillion US dollars. That's a pretty big number, and we expect this benefit to arrive at 2030 already. And we started off with carbon offsets. That's probably what most companies do, what you will do when you travel, when you take a flight, and you offset. You basically buy offset certificates. And by 2050, this will be a market of 200 billion already. So Bold strategies and ambitions on sustainability will bring opportunities to increase revenues for us as a company, for other companies, for our partners, and for us as economies, while saving money and reducing our operation cost, because we want to have our business running as efficient as possible. But for us, not only carbon is important. If we take a look at environmental sustainability, we as a company, we as an organization, we defined 4 pillars to support the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Of course, we support and we follow and we work towards achieving all the Sustainability Development Goals set by the 190 UN nations, United Nations, and we want to achieve those by 2030. But when we talk about environmental sustainability, we focus mainly on carbon or CO2 equivalent greenhouse gases, on water, water we use and we need to replenish, ecosystems, so basically the land we use for our own operations, for our data centers, but also for waste. And as you can see, those 4 pillars are grouped in a circle around our product services. So we want to provide a platform and also products that can help our customers, our partners and countries to achieve their own environmental goals. We want to work with the partners and the customers to build trusted relationships and help them on their own journey. And of course, we want to influence policies to advocate for greener and policies and achieve corporate and societal goals. And also, of course, as mentioned before, our own operations, we have a footprint ourselves. So we want to align those footprints that we have in different areas with the science behind it and also with international goals. And all those efforts and those goals, the targets, they all grouped around one really center piece of our organization, that is us as employees. We come there a little later as well. But let's take a look, since when are we talking about environmental sustainability? It's been in the news lately a lot, but we started already in 2009 with the first carbon emission reduction goals. And since 2012, which is quite a while already as well, we have an internal carbon fee instituted and we are net neutral, of course, with offset certificates, and so on. We also reached like the Zero Waste Campus certification and AI for Earth launch the last couple of years. And 2019, we made a few big steps. First of all, we raised our carbon fee to $15 per ton. I will speak about that a little later. And we also announced last year really ambitious goals. For example, to not only be carbon neutral, but be carbon negative and remove all historic emissions, as you can see, by 2050. That means all the emissions that all the greenhouse gases that we emitted since our founding in 1975. We want to get it back and make sure we've been carbon neutral. We also want to become carbon negative, zero waste, and of course, water positive. And we want to protect more land that we actually use as Microsoft for operations of our data centers. By the way, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat or reach out as well. I will try to answer them later as well. So this is our journey, where we come from, where we want to be. We know these are really ambitious targets that we set ourselves. We call it ourselves a moonshot. And we see how we want to achieve them and how we want to invest and develop those goals together with our employees, actually, because we have a motto at Microsoft. Don't ask what Microsoft can do for you, but what you can do for Microsoft. So we have those targets that I just mentioned. They're defined by our corporate leaders, by our leadership team around Satya Nadella and his peers. But we also have a really strong community within Microsoft. We have a worldwide spanning community of more than 6,000. Actually, this shows still 5,000, but we have 6,000 plus employees that we take our time off during the day or after work to work on sustainable issues that we see in our own operations, in our campuses, or product solutions idea we want to work on. Fun fact, out of those around 6,000 students, or not students, employees, sorry, roughly 10% of them speak German, even though you see on the map we are quite a small country, but we have a lot of volunteers within our organization. Overall, we have 26 chapters by now, so 26 countries or local teams that are working on it. We are 100% volunteer based, and we are there to really make sure to not only make it a marketing event, those sustainability events or announcements, but to make sure from a grassroots movement up that we really believe what we say and that we engage with our colleagues, with our employees. We skill them, we bring them up on a level that we have valuable conversations with our partners and customers. And the mission of this community is to identify and act on areas where grassroots, employee-driven engagements can be an effective mechanism to change in the sustainability space inside Microsoft and beyond. And to do that, we have a shared vision across Microsoft, which is a global community of informed, engaged, and inspired Microsoft employees, collaboratively driving positive environmental change at every level of the company, from the supply chain and the operations to the customers and partners. This is us as employees working on those fields during our daytime jobs, but also beyond. As mentioned, we have 4 main pillars, 4 main targets: carbon negative by 2030, water positive by 2030, zero waste by 2030. You see, 2030 is a really important year for us. And to achieve all that, we want to build a planetary computer to protect our ecosystems, to protect our planet. These targets have been set in January 2020, so a little more than a year ago. And we want to run, of course, by renewable energy only. We want to build a planetary computer that we will see later on. And we want to make it our everyday jobs to build a sustainable future for us and our future generations. So, of course, for that little dry slide, we have to recognize the risk. We have to set standards. We have to digitize data. We have to collect it, make it accessible. But because our targets are so ambitious, not all the technology exists so far. So we have to innovate, and we have to invest in innovations. We have to mature our markets that we work in, and we have to progress policies in the countries we operate in. If you want to take a closer look where we stand and where we come from, you can take a look at our sustainability report that was published a while back, actually in January 21. This is a really detailed report, what we want to achieve, what we have achieved. So if you have some spare time, if you want to read some good stories or some good lecture at night, feel free to go on this link and check it out. So, but we have some of the information on here already in a really condensed way. So we take the main points from this report. The main thing is, what I already mentioned, we have to invest heavily. We have to innovate. So for the next 4 years, we announced $1 billion US climate innovation fund to speed up innovation, to develop new technologies and collaborate on new solutions, to target to have investments that are helping us achieve our own goals, but also our customers and partners' goals. And we provide grants and funds for various projects. Some of those we will see a little later as well. And of course, we want to provide a measurable climate impact. And we want to bring additional capital to underfunded markets, to areas that are hit hard, that need to innovate faster, and to ensure that developing economies and underserved communities benefit the most from it. So let's take a closer look. So what do we want to achieve by forging a carbon negative path? So we want to eliminate nearly all our direct emissions by 2025. So we have 4 more years left to eliminate everything that we emit ourselves. So everything from scope 1 to scope 2, those emissions need to be worked on, reduced, and avoided. We invest heavily on the efficiency to maximize the efficiency of our own data centers. We want to electrify our vehicle fleets. We already started building smart buildings. So our new campuses in Redmond, in Dublin, or everywhere else in Tel Aviv, for example, are so-called smart campuses, as eco-friendly as possible. And also we want to match that approach to our data centers, making them use only renewable energies, recycle, reduce, and avoid. And because it's not only scope 1 and 2, we also want to reduce our scope 3 emissions by half by 2030. So we will do this by improving our suppliers' emissions. We want to improve our data tracking, our reporting, and applying our existing carbon fee even to those scopes. And we are pretty successful so far. And as mentioned before, we want to remove all our historic carbon emissions by 2050. Where are we right now? So 1.3 million metric tons of carbon are earmarked for removal by various projects, by reforestation, by carbon offset projects. We reduced our carbon emissions across all 3 scopes by more than 500,000 metric tons already in our last fiscal year. Fiscal year for us is, we don't work in calendar years at Microsoft, as most technology companies do, especially the Americans one. We have a fiscal year from June to July. So we are in fiscal year 2021 now. In the last fiscal year, we reduced by 580,000 metric tons. And to deliver our first, we also delivered our first tool, the CO2 Transparency for Cloud, where our emission impact dashboard. And we've seen 20 million CO2 equivalent greenhouse gases reduced through our suppliers. And of course, we co-founded the Transform to Net Zero initiative. But short, we want to use, we have a 100-0 commitment by 2030. We want to use 100% of electric consumption to be green, 100% of the time matched by zero carbon energy purchases. So anything from data centers to operations of our buildings to our vehicle fleet. The second big thing that is overlooked a lot, of course, is water. We run huge data centers that probably you know how data centers are cooled mostly by water. So we want to reduce the water intensity of our operations, of our campuses, our data centers. You want to replenish water-stressed regions. So we want to replenish actually more water than we used. And we partner with non-governmental organizations, the NGOs, to ensure more than 1.5 million people have access to clean drinking water and sanitation. And we are focusing on this work through 7 different countries with partnerships with water.org, in Indonesia, Mexico, Brazil, India, Malaysia, South Africa, so on and so on. And we want to ensure greater water access. So people in regions where there's less water than, in Germany, we have a lot of water, but even we start to feel how it's getting less and less and less in the summer month, how the summers are getting drier, winters are getting drier. So we want to ensure that water is accessible for everyone. And we want to digitize water, which sounds strange, but we want to provide data on where we have a lot of water, where a lot of water is being missing, where a lot of water is being lost. And we want to use our platforms, our solutions to digitize those information. So I already mentioned 1.5 million people receive access to safe drinking water. And we already increased by 7 times the volume of water we replenished in our project portfolio. We have 20 new projects on water replenishment in the last year. And we co-founded another coalition, the Water Resilience Coalition. I think we have to speed up a little bit. Next thing, third pillar, zero waste commitments. We produce we don't only run data centers. We don't only produce software, but we also produce hardware. We produce phones again. We produce tablets, laptops, gaming consoles. all that comes in packaging, has materials to be used in the process, and we want to reduce and repurpose device in Microsoft circular centers. So everything that comes out of a data center at end of life is then running through circular centers. All the parts that we can reuse are reused, the parts we cannot reuse are recycled, and so on and so on. And also we eliminated single-use plastics from our own operations. So the nice plastic cups, in a lot of campuses, offices, we got rid of them. We replaced it by durables, by reusable solutions. And we diverted almost, or at least 90% of our solid waste from the data centers and campuses, and 75% of the construction waste as well from demolition when we rebuild our buildings. In Redmond, for example, there's a big reconstruction renovation going on. And we, of course, as mentioned many times before, we enlist our employees to reduce their own waste, to go paperless where possible, to use no single use and so on. So we want to divert waste, we want to reduce waste, and we want to transform our waste account, our own waste accounting. And we've been pretty successful so far. So 60,000 metric tons of waste have been diverted from landfills. So normally regular waste just goes to a landfill, put some dirt on it, forget about it. We diverted 60,000 tons of that. We put it into the circular centers. We put it into recycling streams, and we invested 30 million into those circular economy, those circular centers, to get even better at it. And as you can see on this slide, 90% increase in reuse of service demonstrated by Circular Center Pilot. So we don't just throw the old hardware out of the data centers, we reuse as much as possible from them. And we have a zero waste certification, zero waste certification also achieved for our Virginia and Ireland data centers. As you might know, we have huge operations, huge data centers. For example, in Dublin, there are around 20 or more data centers, and those run on zero waste certifications as well. Third pillar, water. Of course, you want to build, deploy, accelerate a planetary computer. Actually, sorry, not at water, this is ecosystems. Planetary computer, what it means is using big data and technologies, not only to monitor, model, and manage natural resource, but we want to provide APIs and VMs and all sorts of technologies and solutions to the public, to maybe you as students through the Makeathon to achieve your own goals and to help us protect more land than we use by 2025. So we already collected 10 petabyte of environmental data through conservation communities through those efforts, and already more than 700 AI for Earth grantees are providing conservative and sustainable services, building their own solutions on our platforms, on our solutions, and we built strategic partnerships in more than 100 countries with key platforms using Azure to provide conservations and sustainability service. For example, the Nature Reserve Conservatory and Natural Fish and Wildlife Foundations are working with us really close together to make sure we have the right data, we use the right data, and we protect endangered species, land, and so on. And also we supported the passage of the Great American Outdoors Act, as a side note. So we already have some achievements, but we have to build more and we have to become better every day. So what we learned on this journey. Migration to the cloud reduces carbon emissions. I have an exact number a little later. We have to optimize our own data centers to reduce energy, to reduce emissions, water use, and waste. We have to help our customers to do the same with their data centers or by moving to our data centers to the cloud. We built smart building solutions into our own operations in our own data centers. They helped us reduce the embodied carbon, energy, and water during the building process and operation process, and we want to make that data accessible for partners and customers as well. The carbon tax that I mentioned earlier funds innovative approaches, innovations, and the right behavior. We have hybrid and work virtual events, so we have some more details on that, and we focus on packaging and reducing the impact of our supply chains. One of it that I find really cool, 98% of the carbon footprint, for example, can be used or can be reduced while moving a classic on-prem applications and on-prem infrastructure to the cloud. Of course, this depends on what kind of technology you run, how your data center looks, but this is a pretty impressive number. So what we can say now confidently, data centers of the future save energy, water, and waste. We have different strategies to do that, liquid immersion. We have a lot of investments on innovation. For example, some might have heard of the project Netic, where we sunk a whole data center or a whole part of data centers. This is actually the picture you see there in the coast of Scotland. And we found out that it works well. It works really well. We often get the question, doesn't it warm the water around it? But water is actually pretty good at taking care of different temperatures. So we use the cold seawater to cool our servers, so they don't even get that hot underwater. And we don't need fresh water from rivers or lakes and reservoirs for the cooling effect. And because there's less stress, there's less environmental change around the servers, they fail far less underwater. We dropped the data center a while ago. I think we are in phase 2 even now, where we drop like whole soccer fields of data centers underwater. So you have to stay tuned. Unfortunately, I cannot show you the live webcam right now, since we're changing from phase 2 to phase 2. But once they're up again, it's pretty cool to see the sea lions and fish swimming around the data center and enjoying the environment. As mentioned, smart buildings help reduce our footprint. We reduce our own footprint with those Azure IoT analytics, building smarter, heating smarter, but we also are able to use renewable energies, different wind, water, and solar, as you can see here on those buildings. This is a little try, so I'll try to speed up a little bit. As mentioned, we have a carbon tax. What does it mean, carbon tax? So since 2012, every business unit, every operation, every so-called manager, director, they have to pay 15, or it actually was increased by 2019 to $15 per metric ton. So all our business leaders, they have to be really careful how we expand our own operations, because we always have to pay a tax on travel, on buildings, and everything like that. And this expanding tax covers, makes sure that we have carbon reductions, carbon removal. But we funnel this money that we don't even say it, we actually collect it from our business units, and we funnel it into different AI for Earth programs and into various grants. So, sorry for that. Of course, hybrid work, studying abroad, that even through the global pandemic, our work itself has changed a lot. And we hosted our main events, our annual conferences, all virtually. And like we have one of our main events, we had a little calculation on it. We had 2,000 people that normally would attend in person. We had them attend virtually via Teams, what we're doing right now. And compared to an in-person event, we estimated to have lowered our carbon emissions associated with this event by nearly 5,000 metric tons through, like, this is equivalent to 400,000 cars on the road for a day, just with this event. And the amount of carbon absorbed over 10 years is planting nearly 150 acres of forest, which is more than half the size of Central Park in New York, for example, who's been there before. So we talked about packaging already. We reduced plastics in our packaging to only 7.7%. We use minimum 50% recycled. Maybe some of you saw the announcement the other day. It was like 2 or 3 weeks ago. We have the ocean plastic mouse now that is 20% recycled plastic from the ocean already. All our data center packaging is 100% reused, recycled, or compostable. Even in our canteens and our campuses, once we go back to full-time going to the office, our cutlery, our dishes that are single-use, they're fully compostable as well. So we reduce plastic film, primary product packaging, and so on. And of course, we want to decarbonize our supply chain and make it more transparent. As mentioned before, scope 1, 2, and 3, we have to reduce our own footprint to achieve not only our targets, but to also help our customers and partners to achieve their targets and their goals, because by providing software solutions, cloud solutions, we move into supply chains of others as well. And so we also joined the 1.5 Celsius Supply Chain Leaders Initiative and a lot of others. We created our own supplier code of conduct, was updated, and for full disclosure. And all these learnings, those targets, those initiatives, we took forward. We announced the Microsoft Cloud for Sustainability a little while ago. And for those who caught an eye on it, on 27th of this month, we will also provide more details on Cloud for Sustainability and how we will use it for records, reports, reduce, remove, replace, and all those solutions. So stay tuned for more details on the cloud, Microsoft Cloud for Sustainability, which will provide a comprehensive, integrated, and of course, automated way of dealing with sustainable data. So that was a lot of talking, I know, but what we have to do is we have to reimagine our own business processes. You're still students at a university, but basically the university has to reimagine the processes. The future employees you will be working for, they have to reimagine their business process. We cannot go continue as we did 10, even 5 years ago. So we have to reduce our own footprints, our environmental footprints, not only carbon, but also water, land, and on the ecosystems. And we have to use smart technologies. We cannot just throw everything in the cloud and then think, okay, now it's green or it's better. We have to make sure that what we put in the cloud is serving the bigger picture, is as green as possible as we can make it. And we have to get better every day. And since we cannot do it alone, we have to work with experienced partners, with university, with scientists to accelerate our progress, but also your progress as well. The Planetary Computer that we mentioned a couple of times already is there. It's basically, it's not just like a single computer or laptop that you put somewhere, but it's a platform. It's a solution that we want to help governments, companies, help them with their decision making and the power of the cloud. So it combines a multi-petabyte catalog of data on environmental monitoring data that is consistent, analysis ready, accessible through our APIs, as well as directly via the Azure storage APIs that I just mentioned. So we want to provide Planetary Computer APIs to make it easier for users to find exactly the data that they need and how to use them, and simplify the search and the discovery across our data catalog. Also, we wanted to be a hub as for development environmental that makes it easier to use our data and our APIs through a familiar open source set of tools, and allows you as a user or as a company's organization to easily scale your own analysis and your own solutions. And of course, we want to provide applications with it, or better, we want to provide our partners with applications that partners all over the world can use to build their own solutions on top of the Planetary Computer, providing the actionable information that is critical to sustainability practitioners. With this planetary computer and with the funds and innovation we want to work on, as mentioned, we have a program called AI for Earth. The AI for Earth is basically our way to provide grants to hundreds of grantees, to hundreds of organizations, and to empower them to work with our technology and technology other to build technical resources that we developed, that are open source, that provide tools and models and even infrastructure in Azure, and data and mentioned APIs to accelerate technical development and technologies for environmental sustainability. And as you probably figured, we like pillars. We want to somehow sort our efforts. So the AI for Earth, we have 4 main focus areas. Climate, of course. The change in climate threatens all of us, the political South more than us. And we believe AI can give people more accurate data, more accurate predictions and solutions. If you listen to me at the beginning, I mentioned also agriculture, precise agriculture. So we want by 2050, every farmer must produce more food. It will get harder for everyone to produce more food because climate is changing, it's getting hotter and drier. So we have to produce more food with less arable land, with less environmental impact, and to feed more and more people. And we believe AI solutions can help there as well. And maybe you, during the Makeathon, come up with a solution that can help farmers in real time as well. As mentioned before, we have biodiversity, so our ecosystems, the species that are around us, because nowadays species go extinct at an alarming rate. So we want to help discover new, monitor and protect species or biodiversity across the planet. And of course, you mentioned water multiple times already in this presentation. So in the next 2 decades, we want to help predict the demand for fresh water, because you believe it will dramatically outpace the supply. And we want to help people help you build models for Earth's water supply. So we have a few minutes left. So let's take a look at some projects that have been built by our partners, but also by our employees during hackathons, just like your hackathon. Coincidentally, right this week, we have our own 1-week hackathon, which is the largest private hackathon in the world. And to be honest, I didn't really have a chance to do my daytime job today because we were hacking all day long, and you will probably start hacking pretty soon as well. So our grants provide resources and funds to solutions, but also to Azure and other platforms. One of those grantees is immersion. Immersion sounds pretty familiar. It sounds a little bit like the Amazon. And you all know the Amazon is our lung, the Earth's lung. We need it to produce oxygen, to absorb carbon, and deforestation is a huge problem in the Amazon area, especially illegal deforestation. So since 1985, I was born in 86, so since my birth, around 340 square miles of native vegetation are lost to deforestation in Brazil alone. That is 10% of the destruction of Brazilian lands. So what Immersion came up as a solution, they came up with a solution that uses satellite images of Brazil and feeds it through, first of all, it stores them in the Azure cloud. And then it uses their own, Immersion uses their own algorithms on top of the data they collected to identify unofficial roads and other risk factors for deforestation. Because if there's a forest, you can probably imagine, there's a legal road that just goes into a forest, but not to a city or village or anything. It's a pretty good sign to be an illegal logging site where illegal deforestation will happen pretty soon. And out of the data that they collect, that they analyze with their own algorithms, they will build a deforestation risk map, highlighting the high-risk areas in certain areas. And with the information, then they can provide decision makers in politics, NGOs, the needed information where deforestation will happen and where they have to interfere, governments and or official bodies. To do that, they use various solutions or that we provide. They use Azure Machine Learning, of course. They use Azure Databricks, Azure Storage, specialized GPU-optimized virtual machines, Power BI, Azure SQL, app services, and on and on and on to provide this data. Another example, another organization we work with, or we have worked with, is TermaFi. You all probably all know this fancy imagery about heat or about where anomalies detect. Some smartphones have it built in, the so-called FLIR cameras. TermaFi have their own cameras that you can attach to an iPhone, for example. And they want to basically develop software that can analyze heat patterns for pairing thermal cameras with machine learning and to provide thermal data insights to identify and understand temperature conditions in buildings, in architecture, but also in land, and see where, for example, patients with fever or livestock will have health issues or where energy is wasted. And again, it all starts with the thermography. I hope I pronounced it right. The imagery with the cameras and the pictures itself that are collected. They collect the blue, red, probably know how those pictures will look. And they feed their software, the spectrums they collect into Azure and through Azure machine learning models. That then calculates useful metrics through image and data processing algorithms and visualizes reports to display results for various understandable formats for the end user itself, so that we as a user, as a human being, can then understand the image. And of course, we use SQL databases, data lake, storage, virtual machines, cognitive services, face recognition for hospitals, and so on. That's a pretty common use case. Another project is the World Mosquito Program. Most of us, we probably know mosquitoes as little animals that we don't like in the summer because they transmit disease like dengue fever or others. What the World Mosquito Program actually found out, realized that you can put, you can actually have mosquitoes use force by different processes. For example, the Wolbachia. Please don't pinpoint me on the pronunciation. I'm probably murdering this word, but it's a natural occurring bacteria, basically, that is introduced into mosquito populations, and that lowers or stops even the spread of dengue fever. However, deciding and releasing where to put those mosquitoes that are specially treated with those bacteria is kind of hard. So what we have to do, we have to use data sources, satellite images, building locations, population data, all sorts of data. We have to combine this data via an Azure pipelines, and we feed it again into our Azure machine learning models to identify not only human settlements and building footprints, but also estimate population densities. Because even if they're, like, we all know the ghost towns in China, there's a huge building footprint, but there's not a lot of people. So it might be not as helpful. But the output is then put into dashboards again, into visual dashboards, but also into an app that then the decision makers can go ahead, scope the local sites, decide with the data they have actually where to release and monitor the modified mosquitoes and how to have the biggest impact to fight dengue fever and other diseases. Again, Azure virtual machines are used, Azure disk storages, and other programs. I'm not sure if you heard of those three programs. I have to admit, the first time I heard about them, I was pretty impressed. But there's one project that we have been working on as well that is in the press a lot, and that's the ocean cleanup. You probably all heard of that. And actually, our support started out pretty easily. About 3 years ago, some colleagues of mine, they wanted to participate in our 1 week hackathon, our yearly hackathon that I mentioned before. So they heard about this project. So what they came up is machine learning algorithm, because we have nearly 9 million tons of plastic that enter the ocean every year from various rivers. You probably all know the Great Pacific garbage patch, where it's like a continent consisting of garbage, which endangers not only our own economies, but also about 100 or 600 marine species, and with the toxic waste, with all the trash that's floating around. But we helped building, or like our colleagues helped building a solution that basically it measures and with visual solutions the plastic pollution at the river stage already, because like the trash doesn't just magically appears in the ocean. It actually has to travel there, and normally it does by rivers. So we developed an AI solution, an AI camera that you can attach simply to a bridge that then maps the river, that sees all the trash that's floating by, calculates what's in there, sends the data to Microsoft Azure, visualizes the data, and then sends the data back to the so-called interceptor. That then will, if there's an interceptor vessel in the river, it can detect it and collect the trash right away from the river. If there is not an interceptor vessel there yet, then it will of course end up in the ocean garbage patch, where we then know how much trash is going to be there, and we can send, or the ocean cleanup can then send their boats, and the ocean cleanup project can go there and find the debris, capture the debris. But we also use it for dispersion models, so how the patch will travel. Solutions that were used to build that are Azure Machine Learning, Azure Functions, Azure Service Bus, Azure Storage, Azure SQL, Azure Postgres SQL, our Azure Kubernetes Service. As you can hear, a lot of Azure services have been used to build those solutions, and are actually in the field pretty successful. And like particularly proud of this project because it started as a hackathon project within our 1 week hackathon as well. So it will be interesting what kind of projects you will be building over the next couple of days. I hope I stayed remotely in time. Are there any questions? So I can see you're talking, but you're probably still on mute.
Sorry for that. Let me just check. There's some questions. So participants, viewers, if you would like to ask a question, feel free to write it in channel number 2, workshops and talks. And in the meantime, while we wait, I have a question.
Okay.
You showed us a map of the world with the sustainability connected community. And what does the future hold for this community? Will it be expanded to other countries which are not focused on as much as on the topic of sustainability? And what do you think will happen?
Of course, it will expand. Like the map you saw there, this is us after 3 years. Like basically, it all started. We were 3-4 colleagues in Dublin, where I started my Microsoft careers, and we were really annoyed by the paper cups and plastic cups that were around us because I come from Germany, and in Germany we don't really have paper cups in the office. It doesn't make sense for us to go to the coffee machine, get a cup, and then throw it away. We use our mugs, porcelain mugs. And we had this conversation. We met some colleagues from the States, from Redmond to specifically. So we were like 10 people in the beginning, 3 years ago. Now we are 6,000 people. And we are not coordinated. We're not being told by Microsoft leadership team where to go next or what to do next. We are actually a grassroots movement. Wherever we find colleagues, wherever we get involved, we open up a new chapter. And we have 26 already. And we're actively looking which chapter, which country will join us next. As you can see on the map, we don't have many, or we don't have an African chapter yet. So we're currently looking for colleagues to help us expand there, for example. It is like a franchise, like there is no guidance from our leadership team. So everyone who wants to get involved, either through activism or who wants to get involved through a hackathon, or who wants to make sure their own subsidiary gets more sustainable, is welcome to join. So we expect all the countries we work in to join at some point.
Thank you very much. Just a side note, your camera is out of focus somehow.
Okay. Will be hard to refocus. I can move around a little bit so it can detect me again. Is it getting better now?
Kinda. It
could also be like the connection is not the best here where I live in Berlin. It's a little bit funky sometimes.
We just got in 2 questions from the participants. Question 1, are there any plans to move forward with the underwater data centers?
Yes, as I mentioned, phase 1 was successful with a single pod. It was a big success. So we're currently working on stage 2, which will be larger. We take multiple individual pods, we connect them all up. At the end, what we will sink in the North Sea at Scotland will be as big as a soccer field. So we will be moving forward. And so far, the research and the tests are looking really promising that this can be a good solution, because most of human kind lives near coast anyways. We don't have that many people living on the Mount Everest, as you know. Most people live closer to the coast, and so it makes sense to bring the data centers closer to them as well.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And we have one final question. Can you give us a high-level overview of how the deforestation risk mapping was done?
High level, yeah. So simply speaking, a lot of satellite images was collected. Like you all know, Google Maps, Apple Maps, there's a lot of data and a lot of images are being collected. And then there was an AI model built that can detect streets that are going into nowhere, for example. Like, of course, we know like big highways connecting big cities, those streets make sense. Or even smaller roads, even if it's just dirt roads that go into an area where there's a settlement, or if there's some industry going on in the jungle, for example, those streets make sense. But then we taught this model to find the roads that don't really make sense, that just go into a forest. It's not coming out anywhere. And then around those roads, forest starts to disappear. So this is how this project basically maps roads that don't make sense, and in areas that are at high risk of deforestation, with different factors as well. Does it somehow answer your question?
I think it covers it perfectly. Let me just check if there's any additional questions. Not till now. Perhaps one last question from my side. You have mentioned the, how was it called? Just a second. The Microsoft Cloud for Sustainability. Can you explain how do you empower other organizations to be more sustainable? How do they measure?
Yes, so the Cloud for Sustainability was announced a few months ago as a concept, as an idea. We want to provide a platform where everyone can feed in data, like, for example, the satellite imagery that is used for the deforestation projects, and that everyone, any organization, every project team, or every individual can then use this kind of data, all sorts of data, not only deforestation, but marine life, waste management. You can put whatever you want in there, basically. It can be sorted, and then you can use our own tools to make sense of it, or you can build your own solutions on top of it. So we will provide APIs with it. We will provide data storage. We provide data banks. And I cannot say that much about it right now, because on the 27th of October, there will be our official announcement on it. So stay tuned. I think the link is aka.ms/sustainability cloud, but we can share it later on as well. And there will be a big presentation and announcement by our president, Brad Smith.
Perfect. That's something we should keep an eye out. And
yeah, will be really interesting also for us as a community.
We will definitely be tuning in. And I think we have covered all questions. So that was Sebastian Friedrich with his topic on sustainability. And right now we are nearing towards the end of this meeting. Thank you very much, Sebastian.
More than welcome, and really looking forward to see what solutions might come out of the Makeathon.
Perfect. We're excited as well. Thank you very much. And dear participants, tomorrow we will have another workshop starting at 7 p.m. as usual. And this will be the only workshop for the day. We'll start at 7 p.m. and at 8 p.m. without a business talk. And the topic will be End-to-End Envelopes Pipeline by Charles Fry from Weights and Biases. And until then, I would like to mention the networking event, which is starting at 8:30 this evening. And for that, you have received a link in our channels. Perfect. I think we have covered it all. Until then, have a pleasant night, and we'll see each other again tomorrow.